Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. On this week's show, we are going to recap the Fight Pass Invitational 8, headlined by Nick Rodriguez versus Michael Pixley. We are also going to recap Pitt Submission 8, headlined by Wagner Hosha, getting pissed off and putting on a great performance. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, to my co-host,
Corey.
How you doing, Corey?
I'm doing phenomenal.
Good to have you back.
This is awesome, bro. I like this.
So, basically, we don't have much news this week. I really want to get into the recap for Fight Pass and for Pitt Submission. You had a really good time watching Pitt Submission.
Oh, it was fun.
And let's get right into it. Only piece of news we have this week, two pieces of news. One, Polaris is coming up. They are announcing all of their undercard matches and their main card matches. That card looks phenomenal. Can't wait to preview the Polaris card and recap the Polaris card coming up. That's November 2nd. So we'll preview that probably in a week. Or next week's show will probably be the Polaris preview, unless I have my dates wrong. Also this week, Kody Steele won his
Beast.
His Dana Whites Contender Series fight by body shot to TKO, and then is now in the UFC. He got a contract.
That's awesome.
Which is super cool. We've been following
Congrats.
Kody Steele for years and years. I interviewed him back in Kasai Pro, and it was in Dallas years ago before he was there. I don't even know if he had fights yet, or he had just started fighting amateur, something around there. It's been really cool to watch his career. It was awesome to see him have a great performance. He basically, in his last contender, 2 weeks ago, his contender pulled out of their fight, and so he got put on the next Contender Series. So to stay in shape and then put on a performance, it was a really fun fight.
Very
Congrats to Kody Steele. Really cool to see him in the UFC, and I can't wait to see what he does. He's out of grappling mostly now, which is understandable, but that dude has given us a ton of highlights over the years, and I wish him well in his UFC career. So congrats on that.
Well deserved.
To Kody Steele. Let's move right into it. Fight Pass Invitational 8. Corey, I'm not going to say that we called it, but we kind of called how this matchup was going to go between Nick Rodriguez and Michael Pixley last week. I think we sort of nailed the preview for the most part. One thing we didn't talk about, which MacTube left a comment about, was how good Pixley's slide by is. And that Rodriguez has potentially been slid by before by Damon Ramos. And it was a really good thing I don't think we thought of that I wanted to kind of give credit to, which I think also informed a little bit about how Nick Rodriguez is going to play this match. He was aware of that the entire time and was very, very square. He usually plays pretty square, but I think he was really much more willing to push forward in this match than I think we expected. I also think the thing that surprised me most in the matchup here was two things. To your point, was how big Pixley is.
He's huge.
And
he's a big dude.
I think he's bigger than we thought he was, because we thought that Rodriguez would kind of not oversize him, but they were I think they were within about 10 pounds.
Yeah, I think Nicky Rod was 220 and change, I think.
Was he that light? I actually missed the walkout weigh, and I don't have a note for it.
212, or maybe I got it 230 and 220, but they were within 10 pounds.
Yeah, which was really interesting because the way that Pixley kind of holds his weight was he's really comparably sized to Rodriguez, and I don't think the weight difference really made much of a difference in the match. I was impressed with Rodriguez's wrestling.
Yeah.
That was the piece. I thought he would get Pixley down eventually, or he'd have to counter. I thought he would end up on top. To have him be able to repeatedly take Pixley down in this match, as soon as that happened in the regulation, I was like, oh, this is over. If he can get Pixley down, because what the biggest pathway to victory here for Pixley was push it late, push it into the overtime. He's probably not going to be able to flash sub Rodriguez here, so he's got to push to the overtime. He's got to get a late takedown or a takedown, or be able to control him for those points.
Right.
I think the plan kind of fell apart a little bit because Pixley tends to get pushed back. And in this rule set, you're going to get negatives for that, which I really like. I think
we saw plenty of those.
Yeah, we did. And I think I am one of the few people in the community that actually really like. You and I were we were training on Friday. My class on Friday, you came in, and we were talking about the penalties, and we were going back and forth and talking about I really like the penalties because I think that grappling needs more penalties to incentivize action, and we all have to kind of get on board with, hey man, we just can't have the same matches that we had in 2010, 2012, 14, 16. The sport has to change if we want to have more really exciting cards like the Fight Pass Invitational. You have to have athletes like wrestling. You can't really back up out. You can't get pushed out of bounds. There's push outs, there's points. Grappling just kind of lets guys get pushed around And I think we need to really address that as
and
a
lot of
community.
people game the rules, and they let themselves get pushed
Tons
around.
of people, like Leandro Lowe.
Run for the line. Yeah.
Run of the line, like, or counter takedowns. It's kind of what we like about ADCC, or what I like about ADCC, is that there are no boundaries. So, yeah, man, get pushed out if you want. You can get taken down off the mat, and that's a totally viable way to score points on a guy. I like that Fight Pass Invitational is gonna play the edge a little bit, which I like just enough. Like, they're not gonna do the ADCC thing where you go out into the crowd, which I like. I think I am one of the few people that really like that.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of fighting in the crowd, but it's okay.
I like it, but I understand it. And again, as the sport, continues to grow, I think more. It's occasionally good having that as good, but I like the Fight Pass Invitational. Like, plays, you can play a little off the mat. Like, we're not just gonna go, here's a hard reset. We're gonna you're not gonna let you game it, and I think they strike a really good balance there. But also with the penalties, Pixley's getting pushed back. Rodriguez is putting enough pressure into him where Pixley's walking back. He's getting pushed out, or he's not engaging enough because Pixley likes to play that kind of counter slide by game.
Right.
I think that it changed the matchup because then Pixley's down going into overtime, 3 points. Rodriguez has a -1 because of some of the pacing, and we can I think you and I kind of went back and forth, and I'm like, was it the right call? Was it not the right call? I'm happy for more penalties because it pushes guys to have to do stuff more. I think that's what we need until the general landscape of grapplers. We understand that you have to keep pace in these matches. We just can't have the same match we had 10 years ago where guys can hand fight an IBJJF for 6 minutes, do something for 2 minutes, and then
stall for another 2.
It's like we need to.
If you want to take it to the next level, we gotta push to action.
Yeah.
You gotta have layman's kind of excited to see, oh, this is a grappling match, not really understand what's going on, but seeing that these guys are trying to kill each other.
Yes,
that's what we want to see. And then when that's going to happen, you're going to start getting paid more money, and then it's going to build.
It has snowballed. Since we started the show, it snowballed hugely. Fight Pass wasn't a thing. Polaris was just having matches a couple years prior to starting.
At that time, we had Spider. Spider
was I think we covered the first pro Spider event that they ran. They were few and far between. We're seeing really good cards get put together on a frequent basis now, and I think that's partially because there's more money coming to the sport because we're figuring out how to bring the sport's bigger than ever.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Figuring out how to bring people to watch the sport and making it fun. So back to the match. I think it kind of changed Pixley then has to engage a little more because going into overtime, before overtime, he gets taken down by Rodriguez.
Right, yeah.
And there was a really nice takedown sequence where you saw Pixley try to kind of whizzer kick Uchimata him, but Rodriguez does a really nice job because Rodriguez has beat him on the underhook early in the sequence. You see Pixley has a good grip on the outside bicep, and normally from that place, you can kick, and you can Uchimata, and you can throw exactly like he does to Murgali. But Rodriguez, I think, knows this and is able to get his hips behind Pixley in a position where Pixley can usually throw. But then what he does a thing that J-Flo does. Really, really good judo coach. He's like the no-gi judo guy now who has come into jiu-jitsu and okay, I'm going to take the gi off because there's a market for that, and just shows I always forget J-Flo's credentials. Might be a medal, an Olympic medalist, Olympic coach. Amazing judoka, and he's a coach now, and he talks about shelving the leg a lot for these sequences, and this is what Rodriguez does. Rodriguez gets behind Pixley's leg, and then right before Pixley goes to kick for the Uchimata between the legs, Rodriguez kind of steps back and sags a little bit to make Pixley's angle a little poor, and also gets his thigh behind the back of Pixley's leg, so Pixley, all of a sudden, going from Uchimata, has to go over for Harigoshi, which is over both legs, and is out of position because he's leaned back, so he can't make the throw. From there, Rodriguez picks and takes him down.
Yep.
And that sequence was, I think, in my head, watching the match to the beginning of the end. Because they reset, Rodriguez gets him down. He then uses the body lock like he does to everyone, passes the guard, gets on top, knows that he's not going to have enough time in regulation to submit Pixley, gets him tired, pushes him down.
Just cooks him.
Just cooks him. You saw Pixley be exhausted going to the next match.
Trying his damnedest to frame and what have you, and Nicky Rod just cooked him. He was just too much for him. That's Nicky Rod's go-to. He's tapped many high-level players. That's part of his thing. And I think Pixley was game, but I think he was exhausted.
Yeah.
He looked tired.
And then we saw in the overtime, we saw Pixley, we saw him get a little foot slow.
Yeah.
Which is a thing that, with the stance that Pixley keeps, usually isn't as much of a problem because he has that heavy, high bent over stance. Because Rodriguez actually really knows how to use the collar tie, and we'll get into a collar tie later. he's able to keep pushing and pulling Pixley down because Pixley has that heavy bent over stance.
Yeah.
He has to keep bringing his legs up and planting his feet, which is what inevitably Rodriguez uses to get him down because he's heavy on the collar tie. Pixley has that forward stance. Because he's tired, he has to lean up into Rodriguez. He has to get a higher stance. Rodriguez can get him down, picks him over. We did see exactly what we talked about last week. Earlier in the match, Rodriguez does that kind of half pull to ankle pick.
Took him a while to get there, but he
did.
finally got there. 'Cause I think Pixley was keeping his distance. He was keeping his legs away.
Yeah, he knew that was an option. Pixley was very well prepared for this matchup, but once we saw Rodriguez be able to get the wrestling going, be able to get Pixley down, we know Pixley is not a phenomenal guard player. Against a passer like Rodriguez, like you got to be Victor Hugo, and that's about maybe Gordon. Like those guys are about the only guys in the world that can really stop. So not that Pixley is a bad guard player, but just you have to be the two of the best guys in the world to stop his passing. Rodriguez climbs up. He does the standard body lock, the Roddy lock that we've seen him do so many times.
The Roddy lock, I like that.
Well, that's what he calls it, and that's his his like marketing thing for it is the Roddy lock because he does it. He doesn't quite do it like a standard body lock. He does have some interesting little nuances, like the positioning that he has his shoulder, the positioning of his hips, like beautiful body lock passing. Again, very much also an attribute thing. A lot of guys don't have the attributes to body lock pass in the way that Rodriguez does, but he also has phenomenal positioning when he's doing it. Like he never lets you, and Pixley kind of tries it a couple times to hook sweep. Over from like a butterfly guard hook or a single leg butterfly guard hook over, you're just not going to get that on Rodriguez.
It looked like he even tried to do a lockdown, but maybe the position he was in. I think by that time he was defending his neck. He was worried about his neck and getting past as opposed to the lockdown. So
Rodriguez comes up to the top, comes up to the tech mount. When he gets up in the overtime, he's able to get Pixley's arm across and kind of pull down into like a gift wrap, and then sort of it's the beginning of the end. Rodriguez kind of rides him up. He chair sits to the back, and you can see when he chair sits to the back that Pixley's like, oh, you can see how tired Pixley is.
He's like, oh shit.
And then Rodriguez sort of eventually can just fight the hands. Rodriguez is one of the best rear naked choke artists that we have in the sport. He won $1 million on it.
Here we go.
And then that was the match, and it sort of it was interesting, but unfortunately, I don't think it really gave us any more information about Rodriguez especially, but about Pixley is like we kind of knew these were some of the limitations in his game. The guard play wasn't phenomenal. He tends to have that hard stance. He tends to be very reliant on countering guys coming in, and it's like when he's unable to do that, when he has a guy similar size, maybe even quicker than he is, that isn't going to let him get going with Uchimata, is going to beat him in the counter grips, really shut his game down. I would love to see Pixley kind of watch this match, put some more urgency in his game, because I think that will pay better long term for him, because I think people will see what Rodriguez did here and be able to kind of emulate that in a way, because Pixley's game is it's very, very known. You know where he's strong, but Rodriguez kind of shows, again, this is sort of how you beat this guy, and not in the way that like Lovato beat him, like where it's like you can't pass the guard, but like how you actually positionally work and beat him and take him out. I wish I would have seen a little more from Pixley, but this is sort of what we expected. Rodriguez goes on. I'm curious who they're going to put Rodriguez up against next. Do you have any other kind of thoughts on the match or pieces?
I think I was impressed. I think I learned a little bit more about Pixley and that he's that much more of a gamer. I think it took Nicky Rod to overtime to beat him. And Nicky Rod was trying. He wasn't trying to stall. He was really trying to take Pixley down and what have you. Maybe a couple poor resets when they went out of bounds.
You didn't like the resets.
I didn't like them at all. And I didn't like the whole stalling penalties, even though that's where we disagree a little bit. I think I like being able to push to action, but I think Vitor Shaolin was a little quick giving those negatives.
Yeah.
And
I think everyone mostly agrees with you. By the way, I think I am the outlier here with agreements for the stalling penalties.
And there was one that he gave Nicky Rod back that I was kind of confused with. He gave Nicky Rod he took away one of his penalties.
Yeah,
and I didn't know. I was kind of confused. It was late.
I wish the commentary would have been like a little more. Again, it's one thing we talk about. It's as I'm actually doing commentary for Fight to Win this weekend, here in Baltimore. But it's one of the things. Sometimes there is a delay between what we see on broadcast, what you see on commentary, and what the information the commentators have about the point scoring. And so sometimes it can be really hard as a commentator to actually go and to know what's happening to be able to communicate to the audience. But I think it's something that as a community and as a broadcast, as broadcast organizations, need to get a little better about informing their commentators when something weird does happen, exactly why it's happening, to communicate it on the broadcast, because One thing I do love Fight to Win, the UFC Fight Pass Invitational is doing, I love their overlays. I love that they have the total points in the match for overtime. I wish they'd have the negative.
That was a nice little detail you pointed out.
Yeah.
That was nice.
I wish they'd have it during regulation. They show the negatives during regulation because they exist. I just wish they would show them. But in the overtime, when the points actually matter, they have the total points it is a little white number on the side. They have the actual points. And then on the other side, below the total points, they have a negative.
In red.
And so it shows you, hey, there's 12 points total here. There is one negative. And then the actual scoring points are 11 points in total. It's a really, really good way. Because a lot of times organizations will just show the total points, and you're like, okay, how did this guy get to 13 points? It's like, okay, you got to think about it because like the sequences don't make sense because you can't see the negatives, or the negatives are there but the other points aren't there. That is a phenomenal way to just show off, like, here are your actual points you're using to win the match, here are your total points, and here are your negatives.
Yeah.
So it gives you the formula of how to work in it. Fight Pass is doing such a great job with their overlays for their broadcast. It's super easy to follow.
Yeah.
And like I really, really like organizations are finally getting on board. Even Pit Submission does a great job with, like, I love the fighters' faces.
Yes.
Like, organizations should do that. It is such an easy way to tell who guys are.
Yep, and it's there the whole entire time in the fight. You don't have to guess who's who.
You see, I used to do it in like K1 and Thai fights. Used to do it, like, a lot of the Asian organizations used to do that a lot, where they have like little standings of the guy, and it was awesome because you're like, who's that? Okay, that's this guy, and you usually have them in their fight gear, so you could see it. But I loved it. It kind of went the way that we thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
I was really surprised that Rodriguez was so successful with the wrestling. I just didn't expect that.
I was a little surprised, but I guess wanted to go back to my previous point. I think I learned that Pixley is game, and kudos for him for taking that fight as deep as further along as he did.
Yeah.
He took the overtime. But one thing that made me, he looked gassed. So I'm wondering if he doesn't have someone his size or bigger in his camp to really push him.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the
he looked,
guys.
same here. But he looked really gassed during that overtime, and I think that's when you saw. I'm sure Nicky Rod saw it as well. He just put his foot on the gas and pushed. And
that was again, like, Nicky Rod is one. I don't think gets as much credit as he deserves for his ability to like game. We've talked about it since he was a blue belt.
Yeah.
His ability to game plan for a match and make good decisions in matches, like from a strategic standpoint, like both tactics and strategy, of like knowing the skills that he brings to the table and then knowing how to leverage them throughout the match, of like, cool, I can get him tired and now I can capitalize on that. Like, he uses all of the tools at his disposal to effectively do that.
Yeah.
But again, it was impressive for Pixley to be in front of him as long as he did under that level of pressure. But then Rodriguez, just being now that veteran, really know it's a skill he's had since the beginning, since ADCC, since his trials wins.
But no, he's really locked in right now. Yeah. He really is. He's firing off on all four cylinders.
You won $1 million. You feeling like $1 million. Well,
you saw he has a little rash guard he have now in B Team, the $1 million grappler.
I love that.
And he showed all the little details in there and what have you. It's pretty cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
So so what do you want to go in the order we have results here in the quarter, or do you want to go to a different matchup, Corey?
I say we go to let's go right into the Renato Canuto PJ Barch match.
This was not surprising. This was
Wizardry.
You texted me and you're like, I called it. I'm like, I know you called it, Corey. You were right. You were like, if Canuto is going to win, he is going to hit a flash sub on Barch, and it's going to be something jumping. And I was like, I don't know if he can do it to Barch. And I was wrong. This match was close. Honestly, the commentators were giving it to Canuto. I think it was very close up until the submission.
Very close.
We saw really great entries from both Canuto and Barch. I think the reason why is we saw good attacks back and forth. It went to the legs like we expected, because that's where their previous matches have gone into, especially the one they had 6 months ago at PGF. Canuto hits a flying scissor leg.
Yeah.
And I think he capitalizes off of PJ Barch. As they stand longer and longer and longer in the match, you see Barch tend to start blading his stance off towards Canuto, looking to like counter wrestle or like inside trip or outside trip, like getting that leg forward so he can start using it offensively. And Canuto eventually, as Barch tends to have less of the wrestler stance, like the low stance, he tends to stand up higher and higher and higher. Canuto eventually goes, cool, I can now throw a scissor leg off of the tie-up that Barch is using. And you saw Canuto, I watched the match again, actually twice, after I watched the submission and went, oh, you can kind of see Canuto setting up for this jump like 3 or 4 minutes before.
Yeah.
Where you can see him going, okay, and you can see him looking at the hip and looking at the leg position and going, and starting to kind of walk and step around it to just see how Barch will respond to the outside step. And then as Barch gets higher and higher and higher up, he capitalizes on hits a scissor leg takedown to the heel hook, kind of very similar to Rio Chonin, Anderson Silva, Gary Tonin, Edwin Najmi. Like, this is what this looks like.
It was pretty, man.
Yeah.
It was pretty.
Canuto tends to throw it from the backside, which is neat. He does this in a unique way that we typically don't see. He tends to throw it as like a back leg. Go back and watch the finishing sequence. You can see what I'm talking about. Normally you take them back, but Canuto tends to sag in and end them down on their hip.
Right. Yeah.
The interesting kind of macro thing that I thought was interesting in this match is I want to talk about the couple of matches that Barch has lost recently. The Mika Gavao match is ADCC. It's kind of controversial. It's close. But like, I go back to the match with Andrew Tackett. The matches that we see Barch kind of lose are typically matches where he has a young guy or a guy that is close enough in skill, but also willing to just throw gas at the problem, is a term I've come up with recently that I just love using. Canuto gets in front of Barch in a lot of these sequences by just kind of throwing more, because Barch can't counter heel hook Canuto in this match, and he gets close, I think, 2 separate times. You see Canuto begin to kind of wear Barch down, and I think that is a strategy that not a lot of people were physically able to do, but for the guys who are physically able to do it, I think it will be a more repeatable strategy to do to Barch.
Pace. Stringing those submission attempts together. Pace. Just smother. He kind of almost smothered him.
Yeah, which not many people can do.
But I kind of had PJ Barch in almost defensive for some of that fight.
Yes.
Just kind of fighting off submission
attempts.
attempts.
I think that is a way that you sort of have to be able to, like, if you let Barch like torpedo, if you stand up and play at Barch's pace, I don't know many guys in the world that can stand and play at Barch's pace and beat him there.
Right, agreed.
If you push a pace on Barch that is a phenomenal pace, like the Tackett can push, not many guys, like I think Cade can probably push this pace, but like
handful of guys
can push that pace. I think we see Barch tend to like slow down. He's a little older. Like, we tend to see him slow down in a way.
Is he 32? I think they were saying.
No, is he that young?
I think he's 32.
Jesus,
I think
okay.
he's 32.
He's younger
He's
than
old for jiu-jitsu, but he's
younger than I am. I thought it was like 35.
A lot younger than I am.
Yeah. But it was an interesting like observation that I had in this match of just like, oh, we've now seen this a couple of times, that if you can pressure him enough and deal with the offense he's going to throw at you, because he's going to throw offense off you, and you can wrestle him, you can actually fight him in a lot of these areas if you get in front of him. Mm-hmm. If you let him be the initiator, he's going to destroy you. But if you try to counterfight Barch, you're going to lose.
Yeah, agree.
Like, look at TLI guy, Elijah Dorsey. Like, counterfight. Look at all the guys that Barch has been beating. As soon as you get to try to countering and you get on the defensive for Barch, he's going to beat you. As soon as you can put the offense on Barch, like, you might not win, but you have a much better chance of winning. I think Canuto really like cements that here, because you see, that is how he was really able to beat him. He put him on the defensive, and then he just kept taking ground as Barch got a little slower through a phenomenal sequence, and gets the sub. But it was interesting. I'm curious. I don't think anything changes for Barch, because I don't think many people can do this to him.
No.
So it's not really a game changer, but it is an interesting piece as you go and fight more and more younger guys. Because Canuto's a couple years younger. I think Canuto's still in his 20s.
Yeah, I think like 27
or something like that. Yeah. But it was interesting. Any other kind of pieces on the match you want to talk through?
I thought very interesting. Two things. At the very end, right before he gets the heel hook, you saw the look on Barch's face, like he started smiling like son of a... And he knew it was coming. He's like, oh, he got him. But the other thing I want to talk about was how lighthearted and gracious PJ Barch was at the very end. Because he stood right next to him. He was just laughing the whole time. He was like, man, this is awesome. He got me, blah, blah, blah. And it was kind of cool to see how hard they go against each other in the match. But then afterwards, they're like, hey, man, this is good stuff.
I love that level of respect.
And I want to see that again, because
Yeah.
and I think we need
But
more of this
they've
in the
had 3
sport
matches
too.
against it. Like
I think we need more of this. I think yes, you can go ahead and with a negative.
we can have the
advertising,
Wagner
blah,
match.
blah, blah.
We can have we'll talk about it in a minute here.
But that's a whole other side of the spectrum. That was also juicy. But it was nice to see the guys be lighthearted, but be so intense in there and have like I don't say a friendship, but they have like they know what
a mutual respect and admiration for like, yeah, man, we're out here doing the thing.
Yeah,
it takes 2 guys to have a match like that.
It was a hell of a match.
It was a really good match. Honestly, this I was really, really impressed with the entirety of this card. Every single match on this card. We're not gonna have a chance to talk about all of them, but was compelling for its own reason.
Yeah.
Let's move on. I want to skip Rolando.
Yeah.
Ronaldo Jr. I keep calling him like 6 years.
It's okay, man. You get there.
We'll talk about that next, but I want to talk about Dante Leon versus Andy Varela.
Oh goodness,
because it's a guillotine finish.
Oh,
my favorite.
Yeah.
It's an Armin guillotine finish. One thing I really like. So Varela comes out hard and fast, and
we called that last time.
The
very
exact
physical
dynamic of the match we expected to happen played out. You said Dante was going to pull. He pulled. Varela's trying to outside pass. And then as he's trying to outside pass, at one point, Varela plays a hard game. And he just like palm strikes Dante in the face. And Vitor Shaolin goes point. And I honestly, it's something we've talked about a little bit on the show and off the show, is like the game has gotten a little chippy. And we see it from the Rotolo brothers. We see it from Varela. We see it from, those are offhand the guys I can think about. But like, guys tend to like lean back and like hit in the face and not collar tie. It's a strike. It's a hit. I vehemently think that it should be like in amateur tournaments, you're just DQ. It should do a straight up DQ.
Agree.
In pro tournaments, the point I think it's a little more, it's a harder situation because I don't want to see guys getting DQ'd in pro fights. Like it's just, I don't want to see it, but I also think we do need to get in front of it because we're seeing it more and more and more, and it's not grappling. Like you're striking, and I appreciate that Shaolin steps in immediately and is like, point.
Yeah.
Like there's no discussion. It's like this is a point. You hit him like it wasn't a strike. And it was very clearly a strike.
He smacked taste out of his mouth. He got him, and Dante didn't flinch. He just smacked him. I'm like, wow, this is interesting. He just took it. He ate it.
Yeah. Like, it was but again, I like that we're seeing on a big stage like this, like penalties for it, because we need to see more penalties for it, because it's over the last like 3 or 4 years, it's gotten really bad. Like especially with the foot sweeps. We saw it for a while with the foot sweeps where guys just like tie kicking each other. And it has gotten to a point where it's too far. Like Rodriguez, to my counter for this, Rodriguez in the overtime early in the match hits Pixley with a crazy hard collar tie. But you see he doesn't rear back when he does it.
Right.
He reaches forward, he slams it onto his neck, but he leaves it on his neck and he uses it to try to snap Pixley down. He's like he's not bouncing off of it. He's not slapping it. It wasn't. Yeah. It was a little bit of a club, but it was a collar tie club. Like it was actually a real collar tie, and it was like, oh, you heard him go whack on it, but at no point was it like, did he bounce off? Did he do like? He was using it as a positional tool to advance positionally and pull and do something with. A lot of the ways that the Rotolos and Varela have been using these recently is that they're just hitting you. And I really dislike seeing that crop into professional grappling, because I think it sets a really bad precedent.
Yes, it does.
Where that line gets kind of gray, because the line's gray anyway. But I like that we saw him get a point taken away, because I think it for Fight Pass Invitational sets a good precedent. Like, yep, no, we are not going to allow that. It was immediate. It was great refereeing. There was no... Dante didn't have to look at the ref and the ref go, oh, actually, that's a point. It was the ref got on it immediately and went, yeah, no, point. Like, that's not a discussion. He didn't check with anyone. It was there and it was done. And then we saw Varela, really continue the same pace that he had. They both stand up. He shoots a blast double on Dante. And you caught something. We rewatched this at the house on the pre-show before. Dante Leon does the thing that I like the most. If you're going to counter guillotine off of a blast double and a shot, he doesn't sprawl. What Leon does is he takes his outside hand, he pushes Varela's head over his chest, and he goes to loop the guillotine on the cross side. So basically, you put the head in the pocket is when I teach it, when I call it. And then I thought he sits down and he gets the guillotine. And you were like, no. His head's on the other side. And I was like, no, it's not. And then we watched it, and you were right. Varela is able to deal with Dante pushing his head to the pocket side. I think Varela does it. What did you think?
I think Varela switched it up, because initially Dante pushed into his left hip, and I think within the same movement, I think Varela switched over and changed sides positioning of his head to the other side of Dante's body.
Which is where you want to do if you're going to blast double and someone is going to go for a guillotine. If it's same side guillotine, you jump there, they can get underneath you and turn you over and guillotine you. But if you're going to get your head trapped, and Varela's very used to getting his head trapped because he shoots a lot of blast doubles, if you end up on the cross side of the body, you can Von Flu the guy. And it's really, really hard at the pro level to like finish a guy on a guillotine. Dante doesn't seem really bothered by this. Just locks up that side of a guillotine on the arm in and just squeezes in. I was looking at this and they're almost off the mat. Again, I love that there's no reset. This is absolutely would be a travesty if a reset. They're off the mat a little bit. Like,
definitely wouldn't have got that one right there to reset. It'd have been off.
No, and also you can't. I think it's dumb to put guys back in a submission on a reset.
Correct.
Like I understand it, and I think it's almost even more dumb to like let a guy free and clear go, like maybe give him points, maybe you don't. There's not a good way to do it.
Right.
Really, I mean, other than a pit wall.
Pit wall is the solution. There you go.
Pit wall is a solution to a lot of stuff I'm finding out. But doesn't reset, and Varela just almost starts to get the crown of the skull out.
It was peeking out almost, yeah.
It was peeking out. I was like, and it was just in that middle line where it's like either he's gonna be able to pull his head out, but it's like with Dante's crazy squeeze, with every shrug and bench press or lift that he's done, I was like, I actually don't think that Varela's going to be able to get his head out because Dante had his legs locked over the back.
Yes, he did.
And it's like, Varela can do a front flip here, but I think Dante's over him enough where Varela can't get his hips high enough to roll over. Varela's just going to try to pressure up, but Dante's shoulders are actually high enough on the choke where Varela can't actually come over and pull his arm, because you see him do it twice. Varela kind of tries to come over, tries to pull Dante's arm down. He can't. And then Dante just doesn't adjust his squeeze at all. He just levers in and just leans up and into it. And I was like, he's not going to be able to get out of this. And he taps. But it was a great camera angle for it. It was a great sequence. It was honestly, it doesn't really teach us anything about either one of these guys. It's kind of what I think we both picked Dante pretty cleanly.
I learned something about Dante.
What?
He has an on switch. And I think after Varela smacked him, the on switch was on.
Yeah.
I think he started to turn green a little bit. He turned green. I'm like, he pissed Dante off. And all of a sudden you could just like, I think he went to another level. So I think his squeeze is probably worldly squeeze. I think he just probably tried to pop his head off after that. Because like, this guy's gonna
he
smack
said
me.
he heard his teeth grinding together, which is like, if you ever guillotine guys hard enough where it's a really weird, if you've never done it, you ever guillotine a guy hard enough to have his teeth grind together?
No.
That a mouth guard? Yeah.
No.
It's a really weird sound when you have a guy's neck and you're pulling his jaw tight enough where you'll hear his teeth like under pressure scrape against each other. And it's a creepy noise when you hear it. And it's like in the training room, almost everyone I'll let out when that happens. Certain guys like that have fights coming up, I won't, where it's like, hey man, like you either got to learn to tap to this or you got to be able to deal with this.
Yeah.
But Dante in the post fight was talking about Varela's teeth did this, and I'm like, that only happens when you are dieseled into a guy and just squeezing. Because normally you'll get on the neck enough, like guys will just have to tap.
Yeah.
If you have his jaw together like that, it means you're a little like up on the neck. Because and Varela, we know his head was not popping out, but his head was a little further back than Dante would probably have wanted it, which puts you up on the bottom of the jaw, which pushes those teeth together. And if you don't have a mouth guard in, will make that weird teeth scraping noise.
Yeah.
And it was cool to have Dante, like, not cool, it was interesting to have Dante actually talk about hearing that noise because it's a very, it is a memorable noise when you have someone in the guillotine and that happens. But he gets him. And then I love Dante's call out.
Oh my goodness.
He's like 55 or 70. If you guys put a title on Life Fight Pass Invitational, I want first crack at it. And I was like, yes, Dante, I want you to have first crack at it. You're my guy, Dante. I want you to do it. I would love honestly to see the rematch with him and Pato. I think that would be phenomenal. We saw it on Who's Number One with Pato gets him with a heel hook. I would love, like, there's a history there. I think if you bring Pato in and then you bring, like, I think that's just a match. I want to see that matchup over and over and over again because both guys are so good.
Yeah.
And I think it would be really fun. Dante and Joseph Chen, like there's so many matches that are I've been watching Dante since he was a purple belt. We covered him back when he was the guy that won not King Submission, like way back. I've been following Dante for even prior to us doing the show. Okay. So it's been really cool to watch him just like turn into this monster over the years and like still be getting titles. Anything else on this match, Corey?
No, I think Dante's turned to one of my favorite grapplers. I liked him before, but now it's like, man, he's about that. He's about that work. He wants that smoke, and he's good enough to back up everything he's saying. But he doesn't talk a lot of crap. He's just like, bring it.
Yeah, no, he's very like soft. He's a Canadian.
Like,
he's a
hey.
Canadian guy.
And you say, hey, no beef with Varela. It's good, but you can tell he was annoyed.
Oh yeah.
But he's like, okay, bring it. Let's go. So I'm excited to see more of him.
So let's move on. I just want to talk about this finish sequence for this match. Ronaldo Jr. Defeats Zaki Bahents via an anaconda choke, which is usually you see a Darce. This was a really interesting transition for the anaconda. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on why you think he's able to hit it, because I have my thoughts, but I'm curious if you guys. So regulation was interesting. We had leg locks on both sides. We saw Ronaldo pushing more of the pace, and I think more in the driver's seat. We see Bahents tend to play a little slower. He likes a slower paced match. He likes to kind of draw you into a slower paced match, and he likes to hit counter guillotines. Very hard to put away, but like that's what he likes. We saw 2 or 3 separate times Ronaldo hit a phenomenal high elbow that he brings Azaki down to the mat with. Azaki's able to get his shoulders out, able to get the head out. There's one of them that was really, really close. The other one was very good, but I think Bahents had seen the guillotine before and knew exactly how Ronaldo was going to kind of track and follow him. The overtime submission was interesting because Bahents gets out of one of these, comes to a turtle position. Ronaldo ends up behind his hip, like in the ad scoring position for IBJJF, like that kind of wrestler, almost like a referee's position start, but to the side in the hip, like when you cover the hip on an almost guard pass to get your advantage in IBJJF. He then he changes the loop so that his outside hand is under the neck of Azaki Bahents. Yeah. And then the thing that Josh Hanger does, where he'll then go and sit in front of you with the arm and guillotine. But he doesn't do that.
Nope.
Bahents kind of moves funny, and Ronaldo locks in an anaconda and just kind of half rolls to the side. And I went, and I watched it a bunch of times. There's something about the transition that is like weirdly uncommon. It's just not a transition that we see very often. And I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on like why, like what did you see here in watching this sequence in transition? Anything I missed, or like what are you seeing here?
He must have shot that arm through really quickly, because you see him reach, he's under the neck, and all of a sudden the next thing you see is his arm peek through and he goes for the anaconda. So I'm like, are his arms that long?
I think it might have been. That's kind of what I leaned.
I have short, stubby arms, so for me, I can't do that. But
yeah,
it seems to me immediately his hand peek boot the other side, and all of a sudden he has an anaconda lock, and I'm like, okay, wow, I don't think that it didn't look that tight. So from my own experience, you tend to once you get that grip, you walk your legs towards the opponent and try to grab something and kind of close that distance and kind of close off the. No, he's squeezing him. He tries to pull him closer with his legs. He misses, but Izaki's still taps. So he must have had a tremendous amount of squeeze on there. And I guess that comes from having longer arms.
It seemed like something that we'd seen from the Rotolos, where it was like they just have some special attributes to be able to get through. But we don't see the sit through for the arm and guillotine from this position very often. We rarely see the anaconda transition from this position. It was just a really neat transition. I also love Fight Pass Invitational uses this overhead camera better than any other organization. We've seen a couple other organizations have it. I actually really like it. They know how to switch their cameras, and I'm really happy because this one we got a good overhead shot.
Yes, we did.
You could see the grip, you could see the hand that Ronaldo had, and you could, like any other camera on the side, you're not going to be able to see the hand position or the head position. You could see Bahents' face a little bit there too. It was so informative as a viewer. I just love that they know how to switch. The same thing that happened in the Canuto match, the Raquel Canuto match. Like they kept using this overhead camera angle when it made sense. They didn't just. A lot of organizations will get it and they'll flip to it because they think it's cool to have, but it doesn't really serve a purpose. The Fight Pass Invitational just kept going to it when it was like, oh, that's a good thing to go to. That's perfect to see the positioning.
Oh, definitely doing the submission. And for both those matches, it was locked right in right when they submitted the other person. So it was very, very pivotal.
So let's talk about the next sub match in this. Do you have anything else on these?
No.
Raquel Canuto defeats Gavin McComb in overtime. Gets a rear naked choke win in overtime. Raquel Canuto looked bigger than Gavin McComb. We picked McComb last weekend. This was the best performance we have seen from Raquel maybe ever. Like, this was a phenomenal performance from...
Totally dominant from beginning to end.
Yeah, like, and Macomb had some good moments, but we saw late in the match, especially in the overtime, Raquel's wrestling. Her counter sweeps, she hits it's the judo sweep that you hit when you have a body lock, and then you drag them over their own leg behind. It's like a backside trip.
Yeah,
but it's not an osotogari. It's like there's a judo.
It looked cool. I don't know the name of it, but it looked really cool. She kind of almost sits and kicks her leg behind Macomb's legs and kind of.
Yeah, and sets her down. Macomb does a really great job of not immediately like contending the points because they're in overtime, not giving up the points, and then from there, Canuto is able to take the back off of it, goes no hooks, gets a really good squeeze on the rear naked choke that Macomb pulls back the hand. Canuto adjusts even tighter, and you're like, ooh, that might be it. She then gets one hook in the lower side, like the mat side of hook on Macomb, and then finishes. This was, again, I didn't think that Canuto was going to be able to beat Macomb. Like, this is the best we've seen Canuto look, man. I was really, really impressed with her performance here on this. From bell to bell, like, the wrestling looked good. She looked like she was... We've seen her kind of get, like, bullied over before in matches where she's in it, but she's kind of a step behind. She looked a step ahead. And I think that might have been because she was a little bigger, but it also seems like that she looked more confident in her game and running through her sequences. Even she was defending from the guard, and her passing, like all of it just looked much more in control is kind of the best way to put it. I was just really impressed again. I'm curious and I want to see Raquel back on Fight Pass Invitational after this one. It was a very impressive win over Gabby Macomb.
Yeah, and I think it kind of reiterates everything above the neck. I think she did choke her across her face, right?
A little bit, yeah, I think so.
Ouch, that way it hurt, but very impressive, very dominant performance.
Good squeeze.
Yeah.
We have Gabriel Souza defeating Josh Cisneros in overtime. I think Cisneros got the better of most of this match, but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Souza is able to hit a really good, was it a blast double or single or like some takedown?
He took him down. I can't remember.
And then Cisneros just can't, a bunch of times, Cisneros just can't put Gabriel Souza away. Like he's going for heel hooks. This is a fun match back and forth. Go back and watch the match. It was good. I don't think Souza has beaten Cisneros before. This might have been the first time. I know they've met in IBJJF and the gi. I think I might have got this wrong last week when we were talking about it. I forget exactly what we previewed, but this was Josh Cisneros being in the driver's seat for a lot of it, but Souza being tough enough to avoid it, being in the match enough. Cisneros repeatedly going for like the crab ride back takes, Souza being able to defend it. Cisneros does a really good job. One piece I want to talk about, the takedown is what wins the match. It goes to points. Josh Cisneros does the thing we saw in Wagner Hosha versus JT Torres at Fight to Win. When they had that 50-50 battle a couple years back, you see Josh Cisneros figure out how to tech out of the 50-50 and not leave his leg there. They have an overhead camera shot for it, and you can see Cisneros basically long legs. He extends his leg out so that Gabriel Souza will have to reach back really far to get the leg, and then he techs up, he stands, and then he's able to get the knee up above Souza's knee line for the 50-50, and then it's able to get out and through. And it's like, oh, that's how to do it. Because it's one of those things we talk about a lot on the show of like, yeah, guys kind of get stuck in the 50-50 pulling out. This is how to do it. This is unfortunately almost the only way if you want to get out of 50-50 that's not running and turning out of the heel hook. It's exactly what Josh Cisneros does here in this match to get out of the 50-50. Really interesting technique. You should go back and watch just the sequence when they go to mirrored 50-50 at one point where I think Cisneros gets the bite on the leg first, then Souza counters into 50-50. I might have that reversed, but the yank through was just phenomenal on Cisneros because you see him go, okay, I'm going to take out of the 50-50. He gets his legs open, which then lets the other person go for the heel hook. He pushes his leg tight and like long so that Souza will have to reach back, and it's just a beautiful sequence because he gets his leg out of it. Right. And then he starts to work to take the back and do some other stuff. But even in Fight Pass Invitational, wrestling is still important.
Always.
Because that's how Souza gets it. I would love to see him running back.
That would be a nice match because I think it was down to the wire.
It was a couple of times where it's like you knew Cisneros had to submit because Souza's really hard to turn over. Yeah. Like this is one of those. I'm happy there are points, and I'm happy that there are multiple ways to win because the points are legit. It was like it forced Cisneros to even push a more frenetic pace because Souza was up. He was able to leverage a piece of his game to score. And it's like, although Cisneros was ahead in most of the sequences, Souza was able to get that score. And again, I just like the way that the Fight Pass Invitationals kind of configure their rules. It's a really good way to watch a match. Next one, we have Kasia Mora defeating Sydney Ung in overtime. Man, Mora looked good. We looked her up on the pre-show.
Dominant performance. That was dominant. I think she was on her back 6 minutes of the match, maybe 7. I mean, she was
in the regulation for a big piece of it, and then again in the overtime for a good piece of it.
Kind of shelled up the whole entire time.
Yeah, she got in front of Ung's guard, and just passed to the back. And on the broadcast, you said, because I didn't watch the walkout. I kind of tabbed through to the walkout piece because I had to watch this after the fact because I was coaching Thursday night. Right. And so I watched this kind of. A lot of times I'll tab to the walkout, and then I'll tab back and forth where I need to. You said on the walkout that they said that Kasia Mora went from blue to black in like a year, and I went, I don't know if that's correct.
Crazy.
And then we looked it up.
And indeed, she did. She went from blue to black in 12 months.
And she did it in a way, so this is the match, but I want to talk about this kind of sequence because it's really unusual. We looked it up on BJJ Heroes because she has a BJJ Heroes page. I love when the women have BJJ Heroes page. I love for more of them that have BJJ Heroes pages. And I was like, okay, how did she do that in IBJJF? And we went, okay, because you win Worlds, you can jump the belt. So usually it's like a 12 to 18 month period you have to be a belt, or some period of time IBJJF elects, which I think is reasonable for almost everyone else. If you win Worlds the year prior, you can forego that and move immediately to the next belt in IBJJF for competition. So because they don't want you winning Worlds at purple twice. It's like, hey man, you've already shown you're the best Worlds purple belt. Like, there's no need for you to go and do this again. Get out of this division, go to the next one. And we were like, well, how did she go from blue to black in a year? Because the Worlds only ever happens once a year. And then we were like, we looked at her record and we were like, okay. We looked at like the accomplishments and went, oh, she wins Nogi Worlds too. And they went, no, that counts. It's a world championship. The same thing counts. And then we scrolled down, and we'd figured all this out. Okay, she won Gi Worlds. She didn't win purple belt Gi Worlds.
Nope. Because
that would have been the year in that year period where she would have jumped through. She wins Nogi Worlds that year at purple belt, and then moves. So
they're staggered. And it didn't make sense.
Had we scrolled down another like paragraph and a half, BJJ Heroes explains all of this, but we independently spent like 2 or 3 minutes like talking about it, working through and going, huh, this is one of those moments where Miranda helps, where she goes, yeah, just scroll down and it's there. I'm like, oh yeah, thanks Miranda. But again, really, that is probably the fastest in a modern era anyone's ever gone through the belts. Like, it is uncommon. She's been training since she was a kid.
Oh, obviously.
So she gets a black belt at 18, which you can do if you win Worlds the year prior. Like, it's a very unusual situation in modern jiu-jitsu. Previously, like, there's some very famous cases of people skipping brown belt and like other things here and there. But it is cool that she did it under those really strict guidelines of the IBJJF by winning both the Gi and the Nogi, and then winning Nogi Worlds and not feeling the need to do the Gi Worlds. And it's like, nah, I'm going to brown belt. Wins brown belt Worlds, and he gets third in absolute as a 145er.
That's crazy.
And then goes, I mean, it's just like, crazy. It's cool. So I think we've talked about her a little bit. We are going to be seeing a lot more of Kasia Mora.
Oh, yes. She showed that she belongs.
Yeah.
And then some.
Yeah. Really impressive performance. A couple of the matches on this card, then we'll move into pit submissions because I know you're running out of time a little bit. We have Gabriel Almeida defeating Johan Oosthuizen.
Nailed it.
I don't know if you had it. On the pre-show, you're like, I got his last name. I'm like, thank you, Corey. I do not have it. This is an overtime victory. Kind of what we expected. Kind of what we expected from Gabriel Almeida. Still a good match. It was 3 to -1 on points. Really what we expected from Almeida. He looked back in regular form. Good back take attempts. Johan was good from the guard. Had good moments. But Almeida was able to take it. This match, this is the opener for the card. Pedro Falcon versus Christian Guzman. This was a lot of fun.
That was a fun match to watch.
Go back. We don't have much time to cover it. Go back and watch this match. This was super fun. Christian Guzman is very good. But Pedro Falcon, how do you say his name? Falcao. Yeah, I knew I was like, not Falcon. Falcao, MMA fighter. really, really good counter guillotine game, really good back taker, good positional work. Like, he impressed me. I would love to see him back on Fight Pass Invitational because, again, pretty back and forth in the regulation, but still with Pedro in the driver's seat for most of it. And then in the overtime, it seems like Christian gets a little tired and like fails a counter sweep one time, and then Pedro is just on him.
Capitalizes.
The rest of the match, gets his back, and
he was pushing the entire match. Pedro was pushing for the entire match.
It was this was a really exciting, because usually we don't get a chance to cover the openers. This was exciting enough where I wanted to like go, hey, if you didn't watch it, actually worth it to go back and watch it, because it's a fun, high-paced match from two kind of prospects. That really put Pedro on the map for me of like, ooh, I didn't know who he was before this. Maybe I should have. But yeah, fun, high-paced match that was like, it was very fun back and forth jiu-jitsu from both guys.
Agreed.
Any other kind of final thoughts on Fight Pass Invitational?
I think all in all, it was a great event. I would love to see more. So I hope to keep running these back.
Dude, I would love it monthly. I would love to get 12 of these a year. Like, hey, next card. There's a little bit too long of a gap sometimes, but man, the formula is great. The commentary is great. The refereeing is great. The camera work is great. Like, everything about this is exactly what I want to see. Kind of maybe want to see it in a pit because I kind of I do. But honestly, the out of bounds for most of these didn't make a big difference. Like, their Fight Pass has figured it out, man. Like, I love this event. Was fun card to card. Again, when we're covering the opener match, you know it's good. We don't get a chance or want to do that very often. Very, very well-matched card. Interesting matches through and through. Like, man, I cannot wait for Fight Pass Invitational line. We right now have a bunch of really good organizations, and I think we're entering a golden age of professional grappling right now. Like we were just 2019, we were starting to do it, and then we've come back, and I think right now we're about to be spoiled for the next couple of years as we have some really good fighting athletes, exciting athletes, and Fight Pass Invitational, man, I can't wait to see more of these. I hope they keep running them because they are super exciting.
It's kind of like the beginning of COVID, right? Because remember they would have like an event or two every single weekend.
Yeah.
Remember that? It was like, then we got to the point, I think we might have had, at least at the time, felt like we were kind of ODing on BJJ.
Yeah.
But then we got away from that. But now we're going back to that frequency, and it's like, I like it now.
The quality of the matches are so good, man.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and the level of the grappler. And we had some major changes to rules in the last 4 or 5 years that I think are really good. Like,
that push the action.
We get a lot more exciting matches than we used to. And it's like frequently. Like, we have really, really good matches all the time now. And so I'm very excited for it. Let's talk about Pit Submission 8. Let's kick it off with Wagner Hosha versus Colin Sabano. Corey, you take it away on this one. So you want to give us the history? Or want me to give the history? How do you want to do it?
Well, I guess I'll take it. I'll take a first stab at it. So apparently, a couple years back, Sabano he beat Achilles.
Yeah, Wagner's son.
And after that, he was very, I guess, disrespectful to Achilles and to Wagner, and called out Wagner and went on social media and was like, "Hey, I want that smoke." Blah blah blah. Just being very disrespectful.
This is per Wagner, by the way. Like, we haven't fact checked a lot of this,
right?
But Wagner, this is per Wagner, and again, the guy that wins the match, you kind of go to what they say. So
he called out Wagner, and Wagner was like, "Okay, let's get it." So I think that's it in a nutshell.
I think that's the summary that Miranda provided.
Okay.
So yeah, we've covered Sabano before, but man,
and it was one word I used just now: disrespectful.
Yeah. Because
this is one match of all the matches that we talked about today of both events. This is the one that you should watch.
This much you should watch, but like it's free on YouTube. Pit Submission 8 is the last last 4 matches on Karate Combat 50 that's out now.
Yes.
On YouTube, it's free. Go watch them.
Go to the very end. Yeah.
Wagner versus Colin. Wagner, I love. This is in the pit, in that in the CGI pit and the Karate Combat pit. Wagner just pushes Colin into the wall a couple of times and just doesn't even do a takedown, just runs him over into the wall and just pushes and then pulls his legs out and almost double legs him off a cage wall like you would in MMA, but repeatedly throughout this entire it's a 3-round thing, so it's exactly like CGI runs it, what Karate Combat runs, and he just puts a pace on Colin. And the first round is kind of like, it's a little, not back and forth, but it's very much like Wagner leaning on him, weighing on him, getting through his guard, putting pressure on him. I was like, okay, Colin's still in this. He's tired, but he's still kind of in this. And then the round ends. Wagner gets up like Wagner does, having a great time, being Wagner Hosha. And you see Sabano go to the corner. And you see him sit, and you're like, oh, he is very tired. Tired in like a way that you don't see very often between rounds, where it's like when we see like this, we call it out. And then the second round starts.
Almost like Leandro Lowe, kind of. You can see he was fighting to get enough air. He was just sitting there exhausted, panting, just not panting. Even
though Leandro was usually fine, but he looked like he was just
the appearance.
But Savano looks like it's real. Looks like, oh, this is a problem. And the round starts. Wagner comes out. Savano kind of sits for a second, and you're like, oh, this actually is a problem because you're waiting. And Wagner goes, oh yeah, this is you're here now with me, and just proceeds to, like you said, just disrespect him for the next 2 rounds, and almost submits him once with an armbar, like.
But it purposely just kind of with the leg around his neck, he just starts shaking his leg.
Like pushes him off. Like it kind of seemed like he didn't want the arm almost.
He was just cooking him. He was just trying to, like, I'm going to make you feel every bit of this.
Past your guard, past his guard, gets on mount, like gets his back and like fake like mimes like he's hitting him in MMA, pushes him over. It was just the Wagner match that none of us ever want to be on the receiving end of. Was what this match is. When Wagner can just get ahead of you and be a little annoyed because of something you did that he's upset with you about, and you're like, oh, cool. This is my hell. This is my Wagner Hosha nightmare. It was that kind of Wagner Hosha match.
There was a point in which there was I don't know if you caught it or not, there was like a little bit of blood right next to him on the mat. Looked like Wagner took his finger, wiped it in a puddle of blood, and gave him a wet willy. I mean, I got to rewind and take a look at it, but it was interesting.
But yeah, you caught a bunch of stuff on this card that I actually missed.
And he just basically, he was talking to him in Portuguese and maybe a little English the entire time. You could just hear Wagner talking to him, and it was just
Wagner talks a lot of shit, and it's one of these days, one of the people on the Grappling Guard team is going to break and just Duolingo Portuguese, and we're going to learn. I'm learning Spanish right now. I took Spanish for like 7 years, so I know enough of it to kind of get by, but it was like Portuguese. I was like, I might have to bite the bullet. I think Miranda and I, one of us is going to bite the bullet and just Duolingo, because like stuff like this, I'm like, what are they saying? I want to know. And then with 15 seconds left, Wagner like triangle Kimuras him from the back, and then runs over to Josh Palmer on commentary, who goes, I told you I was going to brutalize him for 15 minutes. And I went, ooh, that's some Gordon Ryan shit, where he's just like, yeah, I could have probably submitted you in this match earlier, but I chose to just make it hell for you because I'm upset about the shit that you have talked. And I like the Canuto and Barch thing. I like the respect. I like the back and forth like that. I also a little bit, as I get older, do kind of appreciate these matches again, where it's like, because Colin Sabano also pushed Wagner at weigh-ins, like shoved him at weigh-ins, where it was like, it was real. It was some real beef. And then Wagner should just show up and go, okay, and do this. He also held it a little long in the tap.
A
little bit.
He was tapping.
Which, again, I really don't like, but I think it looked like, and what I hope was happening was that he was more holding the choke. Then he was continuing to crank the arm. Okay, you had the arm and he was pulling the choke. Again, I don't really like to see that, but it didn't look like he was continuing to hurt him in it. But I do kind of like these little these squabble matches occasionally when you have a guy like Wagner, 42 years old, just puts a clinic on. Again, you medaled at ADCC this last year, my guy.
He still got it.
He still got it. Doesn't do IBJJF anymore, and I don't care. Whatever he's doing for his body to keep looking like this, man, I'm down for it.
Well, they actually asked him after the fight. I'm gonna bring it back really quick. Right before he armbarred him, he had him kind of almost like tech mounted. Yeah. And he kind of jumped up and kind of came down on top of him really hard. You go, oh, he's trying to make this painful.
He's messing with him.
But at the very end, I guess the gentleman that was commentating, I guess the ringside commentator, what have you. Apparently he used to fight MMA because he referenced that.
Robin Black.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he has him in how much longer he has in this thing. He's like, well, as long as I can kind of treat people the way that I've treated this guy, I'll still do it. But if the roles reversed and I'm treated the way that I would just treated him, then it's time for me to step away. And I think he kind of indirectly referred to him as to Sabino as a scrub, which I thought was very interesting. But I mean, apparently he got Wagner hot on the collar. So
yeah, man, that's not a thing you want to do with Wagner Hosha. If there's any guy, there's a couple of guys you don't want to do that to. Like Wagner's on the top of my list for guys like that. So
so I think that first round was kind of competitive. I think there was one time Sabino had a leg injury that that Wagner had to address, but after that first round, it was just on to the races, and you could just see the
gas lead. It was an interesting matching. It was a highlight match.
I felt bad for Sabino at the end. I was like, but
I felt a little bad, but really it was like you push a guy at weigh-ins. As long as Wagner's not doing something he's not allowed to do in the match, then the referee should step in and stop that. Man, it's a combat sport. If you're gonna push a guy to, you're gonna push a guy to weigh-ins, which is not allowed. Wagner can kind of do what he wants to do in the match. Again, my wife's favorite grappler is Wagner. I like Wagner a lot. I am biased. There's plenty of guys that would do this. I would probably have more of a problem with it, but I like Wagner. I've enjoyed covering Wagner for a good portion of the last 8 years in his career. Watching him, got a chance to interview him and talk to him before. I want to see Wagner do this for the next 10 years.
Oh, same here.
I would love to see him and his kids competing on the same cards again. They were all 3 in ADCC. Like it's a neat. He has a neat game, and it's been really interesting to watch him kind of change and develop his game. As he goes up to 85, as 185 and beyond, and like from earlier career 145, 55, like it's been interesting to watch kind of his progression of his career. One of few guys still doing it at this level this long. So yeah, I like Wagner. I'm super biased on that. It was a really interesting match.
He's an OG. He's an OG for sure.
I was like, hey man, this is what Wagner can do. And by the way, taking nothing away from Colin Sabano, he's a really good grappler. Yeah. Like I don't want to shit talk him at all. Like he beat Achilles. Achilles is also a good grappler.
Oh, for sure.
Achilles has wins and losses here and there. And has been less consistent than his dad or than his sister. But like,
Sabino's he's not a slouch. But
Wagner he's good. Wagner referred to him as a scrub. But and if you can do that to a guy like maybe on your level, but yeah, we've covered his matches before. Sure. Like Colin Sabano is not a bad grappler. So that's why it's even more impressive to be able to put this kind of a performance on a guy who we know isn't a bad grappler. So it was interesting.
Agreed.
We have 3 more matches on this. We're going to talk about AJ Agazar and Peter Frank, Paulo Miao and Paulo Montavani, and Daniel Slather versus Mateus Costa. I was going to say which one do you want to do. I want to talk about, give me his last name. Sattler. Daniel versus Mateus Costa. He hits a jumping, flying triangle armbar off of the top rope with a pit wall.
Highlight reel.
I don't care whatever else happened in the match. That's the one thing I want to talk about. It was awesome to see. He must have dropped like almost 7 or 8 feet probably because he's almost at the top. He jumps over Mateus Costa here, and then you hear him like slam his back on the mat while he's going for the armbar.
It was pretty impressive.
It was wild.
You saw him break fall with both arms, but still, he hit his head a little bit, but he was up there and he came down pretty hard.
Dude, that's the pit. I mean,
it was impressive.
I have to eat my words a little bit because I wasn't a huge fan of the pit for like grappling a year ago. And then we've watched more and more because I was more concerned about like, oh, the logistics is annoying to put a pit in for these things. And like the more we watch it, the more I'm like, yeah, man, put the work in. Yeah. Buy the 4 walls, get the bit, whatever you got to do as a grappling organization to do it. This is the way to do it.
No breaking action.
Oh my! It just and you see stuff like this, like
non-traditional, just takedowns and throws.
Wagner can just push Colin Sabano into the wall and knock him over and get a takedown. Like I didn't have to watch guys fence and stand and hand fight for 10 minutes. In Fight Pass Invitational, it wasn't that bad, but I guarantee you, more of those matches get to the ground faster if you have a pit wall. Oh, yeah. Like whatever gets us to the mat faster, and I think a cage, guys can stall on the cage on the flat wall. This angled wall,
plus the corners of the pit too. We saw that with Nicky Rod and Max Jimenez.
Yes,
he had him mounted in the corner with nowhere for Max to go. So,
dude, the more I watch this, the more I am on board for highlight reel stuff like this. Like it's the I hope it is the future. Like our gym. So our gym, we're going to Grapple Academy 3.0. So our gym is moving locations again in November, and the gym owner Greg is putting up pit wall in the new gym. Can't wait. I was like, it's dumb. And I was kind of quiet about it. And now I'm seeing it go up and I'm watching this. I'm like, I'm super excited about it. And I'm super happy that no one listened to me and we're putting it in. So yeah, I really hope that we have more organizations that do it. Now I'm on board. I eat my words and very much go, hey man, I was wrong about it. Like it is such a better way to do grappling, and I'm very happy that we have it. So that was a very fun match. Again, all 4 of these at the end are at the end of the Karate Combat 50 card, so you can watch it there. You want to do AJ Agazarm or do Paulo Miyao? What do you want to talk about?
Let's talk of. Let's go to AJ.
Okay. AJ comes out with the nunchucks, and I got 3 messages about it. Like,
well, first he had jacket, he had pants,
he had a
boots,
whole getup,
and nunchucks. Yeah, he had the whole guard, man.
Which I kind of appreciate. Like, a lot of guys give Agazarm a lot of shit.
He even gave Frank a pair of nunchucks, and they were kind of going at it for a little bit. It was fun.
He put on a bit of a show, which I like. Like, he give me some personality, give me some some flavor. Like, I like it. I don't want to like overwhelm the show, but like it made me watch. I was like, immediately we knew it was gonna be a good match.
Oh, and then Peter Frank came out with a freaking leopard fur on a skateboard.
Dude, Peter always comes out on a skateboard. But like, it immediately made me like, as a grappling fan, I know both these guys, and I'm excited how this match is going to play out. But as a non-grab, you watch this, you're like, this is kind of wild. What's this coming? This is an interesting matchup. And it was the perfect amount of theatrics to make me like really engage the match. Peter Frank took everything off. He was like full shirtless. They had AJ Agazarm's picture of him in Bellator, which was funny, and they had the gloves photoshopped out, which I thought was really funny. So it was just the blue Bellator gloves, I think, without the B on them, which I thought was hilarious. And we saw a pace from Agazarm that we don't see frequently. And I was really excited because we talk about AJ. We go back and forth on AJ Agazarm. And more recently, honestly, I've been on the other side of the swing of like actually really appreciating what AJ brings to the game. But I've always been a little annoyed in the last couple of years just with the pace. Like he doesn't tend to push the pace that we know he can push, and he always seems like he has more left to give at the end of a match. I'm like, why didn't you show me that? Dude showed up, man. Peter Frank came at him, and AJ Agazarm hit him with 4 or 5 different like standing suplexes.
Yeah,
and you're an Ohio guy.
Yeah,
and you know that AJ Agazarm wrestled for Ohio State.
Oh, of course.
And it was cool to see AJ like using like traditional collegiate and like folk style freestyle wrestling, even like a little Greco on Peter Frank. It was like, if Frank is going to give you his back in that position, you're not going to jump it. You're going to lift up big score. I think those are huge pieces that led to Agazarm winning in the judges' eyes, because the first match was a little close. Mm-hmm. Again, I love that they're using the open scoring. Like, the open scoring between the rounds was a phenomenal here. And the commentary talked about it. Yeah, man, AJ takes that. It was close. I think it was a split decision on the first round for AJ. But we got to see a bunch more action and pace from Agazarm. And, like, if Agazarm can continue to do this kind of stuff, man, I think he's really right back there in the mix. He's a guy that still does trials. He still wants to be in these big tournaments and stuff. And I think if he has performances like this, he can still do it. And I still want to watch him do it. He looked good at PGF. He's looked good in trials. He looks good when he opens up his game. He's also a phenomenal tactician. I mean, he's in the rules seminar for the athletes when Mo Jassam, coordinator for head runner of ADCC, he brings up Agazarm like a couple of different times, because Agazarm knows how to play for the points to leverage his wrestling, and Agazarm will pull right before points and then stand up and force you to wrestle with him so you can't pull too. It's like, he's a masterful tactician there. We just have been annoyed the last couple of years because he tends to like play this cat and mouse game where like he's like tentative and like waiting for you to make a mistake. When he runs forward, man, this is a really impressive performance.
Oh, well, you kept hearing this corner say, wrestle, wrestle, wrestle. So you saw numerous times he would shoot for the single leg and all that, which was very impressive. But also you would see Frank's ability to counter and to get out of those things, which is impressive. And the couple of times that the Agazarm took his back, you would see how it's kind of unconventional, but you would see Frank took his leg and he kind of almost started torquing his foot towards his chest, kind of putting pressure. So I guess that would kind of open up some space.
That traditional
between
almost
the chest and the back.
bar.
Yeah.
Like the Gracie defense knee bar.
Gotcha. I was like, it's been a while. I don't think I've ever seen that. But then again, I'm just a purple belt. But still, it was impressive. But he did it a couple of times. And I'm like, that's interesting, because when he's pulling that back, Agazarm has to create space. You can't really keep close to that distance because you're going to snap your own knee. So I was like, that is interesting. But Frank's ability to counter and to constantly turn that counter into an offensive move. Like the one time when Agazarm took his back, he climbed his back, and Frank just kind of sat there, and all of a sudden he just kind of shucked him off his back, shucked him forward. Yeah. And he hit the ground, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, interesting. Nothing phenomenal, but his timing was on.
Peter Frank has always had really good timing. That's why he hits so many flying arm bars. He's a real high flyer, and that's why Miranda and I really like talking about his matches.
He's unconventional too. Some of his advice is unconventional. You don't expect it. You go, what was that? You got to rewind it. Like,
and I kind of think that might have been one of the things that led Agazarm to push a heavy pace, is because he knew that like Frank's gonna kind of jump at me. He's gonna kind of play that game I'm gonna play, but then he's gonna jump at me, and that's not really something that Agazarm does. No. So I think Agazarm knew, man, I just have to keep a pace on him the entire time to prevent him from having those opportunities on his own terms to jump onto me. And I loved it. I think this is one of the best matches that we've seen AJ in a while. And Peter Frank is very good. Not quite like the upper echelon world adult level that we've seen from Agazarm, but like still really, really phenomenal high level competitor.
Oh yeah, he had a series of attacks on Agazarm, quite a few leg attacks.
Agazarm's never going to tap that like Paulo Meow, but still.
He had his arm a couple of times, and Agazarm had to adjust. So I mean, Agazarm is like, I have next to his name, I think very, very hard to submit. And dude, well-rounded. He basically showed all of that. But
Agazarm's hard to put away. Guys, and he's the guy that will go out not infrequently before he taps. He's like, dude, Agazarm's a dog. And again, I like that he's kind of had this redeeming arc as of recently, like where that kind of bad boy, Florida boy thing, he seems to be putting that more behind him. And we're seeing him like show up and have these really nice and impressive performances on the mat. Like him at PGF talking about like he was like a voice of reason backstage, like trying to stop the fight and like get guys in order. Like I like that he sort of moved more into that veteran role and still be able to have these great performances. So it was fun. Anything else on this one?
No, that's it.
AJ takes a decision there. It was a good match. It was again, very fun match from Agazarm. Last match we're gonna talk about today is Paulo Meow defeats Pablo Montavani. This was a bit of a slower paced match. Good attacks came from Montavani, but really it was a lot of Meow either controlling from the guard or controlling from the passing position and really stifling a lot of what Pablo wanted to do. You had a couple pieces in your notes when we kind of talked about this on the pre-show that you wanted to run through.
Oh yeah, that one in particular was the heel hook that Meow was caught in the beginning of the second round. It was tight enough initially that he had to address that quickly. And we looked at it a couple of times, and we see how he kind of pushes his foot, Montavani's foot away to kind of open up his knee a little bit to kind of relieve some of that pressure.
It was interesting because we know, Paulo Meow, we know he's not going to tap. And you see him walk away at the end?
Oh, yeah, he's walking like his leg was,
and then I was like, how do you walk? And I got up off the couch because we were watching it upstairs, and I like walked. He was exactly like that. I'm like, yeah, man, that's how he walks forever.
That's like how I walk when I get out of bed in the morning. He's kind of hobbles, and I'm like,
well, he's kind of bow-legged out because again, he's like no ligaments left in his. I don't think he has any ligaments left in either knee. Like they have an MRI of his knees somewhere, and like he's got nothing in his knees. And I mean, I think I watched an old match with Gary Tonin or Eddie Cummings where they like toe hold them, and like you can see him like snap the foot, and he just goes and just like he let himself the mat, but he's fine. He doesn't tap to it. I don't think they've ever been tapped to a leg lock. Like again, ADCC 2019, Tyra Tolo is like knee barring through his leg. That very famous picture. He's like, okay, that sucks. I'm gonna get out of this.
But what's interesting though, the heel hook that he was in, I think most people would have tapped, even though we kind of went through it and we were kind of questioning how tight it was.
Yeah, because the leg wasn't fully turned over, but it was also like Montavani has a good bite on the leg, but it was one of those. This is always the fun thing to do when we talk about guys that we know are notoriously tough to leg locks. It's like, how do you score that? It's like Vinny Magalhaes. Like, Frank Jones broke his leg off. It's like Gantamer, the guy Mikey fought in the 1FC. Like, guys that you know are really, really hard to submit with leg locks. Like, if you have a deep leg lock, if they're not going to tap, if the guy isn't going to tap to it, like, how tight does it matter? Like, does it score? Do you score it as a judge or referee? It's like, well, normally, it's like, yeah, but that guy is not going to tap to it. Does it matter? And it's a scoring question that I've never really been able to answer because it's like, well, if he's not going to tap to it, it's basically just like a straight ankle grip that he's just using where it's like,
And the question is, how tight was it? But like you were saying, no one but those two really know.
Yeah. And it looked Meow, again, to his credit, I don't think when we rewatched it, I don't think that he was leveraging, like some guys will leverage like my ligaments, like Langacker versus Taza. We saw him just kind of like, man, you really get turned here. And Langacker has the flexibility to do that. But it looked super tight. Meow, it seemed like he got in front of it and like he started addressing the foot. He pushed off. He made sure that Montavani could never get a displacement between his hip angle and his knee angle over to like torque into it. Like Meow had good defense here for the heel hook. It was definitely one of the bigger moments, like right in the beginning of the second round, when Mantovani locks us on, and then Meow comes in, and then Meow sort of has to make up some ground after that heel hook attempt, and is able to do so, is able to really prevent Mantovani from getting into like a K guard or any other leg attacks later in the round. I think that was the closest one that we saw him in throughout the match, and then really it's just Meow stifling Mantovani from the guard and sort of getting past and working from top position for most of the match. And I think that's what wins him the match ultimately, is sort of just the control that he has. It was a little less exciting than a lot of the other matches that we've talked about this week.
Yeah.
But it was still definitely an interesting match from a veteran competitor, and honestly, in both these guys.
Yeah. All in all, fun match to watch.
Yeah.
I agree. It was Meow who won that.
I think it's reasonable.
Yeah.
Again, I would love... I want to get more clarity on the Karate Combat scoring, because the CGI and Karate Combat, I hope we see more events in those rule sets and in the pit. I just want to get more clarity on exactly what I'm looking for, because Fight Pass Invitational, it's pretty clear. ADCC, it's pretty clear. For these two organizations, they're really up and coming, and they're really like having high-level, phenomenal grapplers in here. I just want to get more clarity on like exactly what I'm looking at. I would love either organization to put out like a breakdown video of like a match and go, okay, here's our criteria, here's what I'm looking at. Like ADCC has done it a couple of times, a couple of years ago. I want to see more of that so I can better understand exactly what we're using to score, because it wouldn't surprise me to have more and more organizations pop up. We're already seeing organizations use the pit and be able to use that scoring. And so I'm on board, man. I'm down for it.
I think as time goes on, we'll see it develop more. And they'll fill in some of the holes in it.
The questions that we have. Yeah. But overall, honestly, phenomenal weekend of matches. Corey, anything else going on? We're in the outro now. Anything else going on this week that's fun for you, or anything else you want to touch on for the weekend?
Oh, no, man. Just trying to enjoy my day off tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. I learned that Friday afternoon that we have tomorrow off, and that was I was very, very pleased to learn that I got an extra day to kind of hopefully. I have some plans for the podcast set up now. I have some plans, so hopefully in the next month we're gonna have a little bit different of a backdrop, and like we're gonna sound treat a little more. So I'm looking forward to that. So my extra day will hopefully let me do that. But anything else going on or not?
Nah, just my kids go to school tomorrow. I'm home by myself. It's gonna be awesome.
Hell yeah,
that's about it.
So yeah,
Monday fun day.
Nice. I got nothing else going on. So as always in the show, I'm your host Maine, the co-host
Corey,
and we have the Grappling Reruns. And that what it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.